One of the benefits of being stuck at home is you get to watch a lot of movies. And Ben and I have been watching some of the movies that I loved when I was about his age, and we finally got to one of my favorites, and that is Rocky 4. If you're not familiar with Rocky or not familiar with Rocky 4, Rocky is played by Sylvester Stallone. He's Rocky Balboa, and he's this young, small, scrappy fighter who, through his hard work and his sheer willpower and determination, rises up and becomes champion. But in Rocky 4, he has his biggest challenge when he faces Ivan Drago, this 6'5", 260-pound Russian who can punch with 1,000 pounds of force. But through the course of the movie, of course, Rocky trains hard and he runs up to the top of a mountain, and in this complete slugfest in Russia, he defeats Ivan Drago, and everyone is cheering. And at the end of the movie, Ben and I were up and we're throwing punches and celebrating. And you know, a movie like that where the scrappy underdog conquers through sheer determination and force of will those strong forces against him, that would be a great movie on a typical Easter. Typical Easter where it's nice and it's sunny, the birds are chirping, the water is bubbling, the flowers are blooming. But as we all know, this Easter is a little bit different. Not a little bit, a lot different. We won't be together at church. We won't be outside. There's going to be snow. This Easter is a lot more like watching Rocky 4 when you're an adult. Because here's what you know. If you're a foot shorter and 100 pounds lighter than this steroid-fueled juggernaut of a boxer, and you walk towards them, letting them punch you over and over and over in the head, your hard work and your determination is not going to lead you to victory. You're going to get knocked out and probably get brain damage. See, when you're older, you become a little disillusioned about the mystique of something like Rocky. And frankly, what we're going through now is a little disillusioning to us. It's not something that we can defeat with determination and willpower. That's disappointing. We come today to Easter, and we come with not only disillusionment, but disappointment. I love Easter. I love to be together in a full church, belting out with all our strength those hymns of Christ the Lord is risen today, and hearing the bells ring, seeing baptisms, having the Lord's Supper together, everyone excited and just filled with joy to be there. Of course, this Easter is not like that. So we come with disillusionment and some disappointment, maybe even some despair. Because as we're watching the news, we see the numbers just keep rising. The death toll climbing. It scares us. And in fact, many of us now are experiencing this not just as something far away on the news, but we have friends. We have loved ones who are getting sick, maybe even dying. So we come to this Easter Sunday as one that's totally unlike those before. We come not with excitement and joy, but with some disillusionment, some disappointment, some despair. But here's the good news. That might be our opportunity to finally understand the message of Easter. You see, Easter doesn't come to us as a way of confirming how great things are in the world, but Easter comes to us when we're in our despair, when we're in our disappointment, when we are disillusioned. It comes to us then because that's when we need the message of Easter. Because Easter is not about confirming how great our life is, but it's about hope for something better. It's about hope for a new creation. It's about hope that the way that things are is not the way that they will be forever. And if we come to Easter with those emotions, then we come just like those first followers of Jesus came to that first Easter Sunday. They came not feeling great about the way things were, but they came with disappointment, they came with disillusionment, and they came despairing. But they received good news, the best news that changed their lives and changed the world forever. In John chapter 20, Jesus gives 2 sermons that I want to share with you. But don't worry, they're not long sermons. His first sermon is 1 word. The second sermon is 4 words. I think they give us the best hope, the best news we could ever get. In John chapter 20, we're told that Mary Magdalene, one of Jesus' most faithful followers, came on the first day of the week, while it was still dark, to the tomb. She went, and what she found there shook her to her very core, because it tells us that the stone had been removed from the entrance. She'd come to pay her respects, to look over the body of her Savior, of her Lord, of her teacher, her friend, and she found something that she didn't expect to find, something that scared her, and so she ran back to tell the other disciples. And here's her message. She said, "They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, and we don't know where they've placed him." And so Peter and John race with her back to the tomb to see what's happened, and they found it. Like she said, the stone is rolled away and his body is gone. And they don't know what to do about it. They don't know what to make of this scene. We hear that John sees and believes, but we don't know exactly what he believes, because John also tells us that they didn't realize at this point that Jesus had to rise from the dead. And so they run back and they leave Mary there. Mary is standing in front of this empty tomb and she's in tears. She's crying. And she decides to bend over and to look into the tomb and see if she can figure out what's going on. And when she looks in, she sees 2 angels. And these angels look at her and they say, "Why are you crying?" Mary replies again, "They've taken my Lord away, and I don't know where they have put him." Mary then turns around. And when she turns around, she sees someone. She doesn't know who it is. She thinks it's the gardener. It's Jesus. Why doesn't she recognize him? You'd think that loving this person, following him for so long, she would recognize him. But remember what's going on. Mary is completely heartbroken. She's crying. She's grieving. She's confused. She's not looking people in the face. She's not trying to see who it is. Her eyes are red and blurry and swollen from the tears. She's confused because this loved one, his body is not where it's supposed to be. She turns around, and the man, Jesus, says to her, "Why are you crying? Who is it that you're seeking? Who is it that you're seeking?" Mary was someone who had a deep history with Jesus. We're told in the Gospels that she was someone who was sick. She was oppressed by evil spirits, and Jesus met her and he healed her. He brought her freedom from her oppression, freedom and relief from her suffering. He changed her world, and so she began to follow him around, to care for him, to use her own resources to provide for him and for his disciples. She listened to his teaching. She served him. He is her teacher, her Lord, her master. She loved him. She doesn't know where he is. But Jesus asked this question: who are you seeking? It's actually the first question that Jesus asked in the whole Gospel of John, with a little twist. As two of John's disciples are following Jesus right in chapter 1, he turns around, he looks them in the eye, and he says to them, "What are you seeking? What are you looking for?" This word seeking is about what we look for in our life to give us meaning, to search with all of our energy to find something. There are lots of things that give us meaning or significance. And I wonder sometimes if we are almost inoculated to the message of Easter, to the message of resurrection, because there are things that we find in our life that give us these little joys. They're good things, but we celebrate the fact that we've got a house, a good job, can take a restful, enjoyable vacation. But those little joys that we celebrate are almost like eating a lot of sugar that satisfies us, and it's sweet, but it begins to numb our taste buds, so you can't taste the raw sugar of a piece of fruit. And those little joys keep us from seeing what the real good news of Jesus' resurrection is. Jesus turns to Mary and he says, "Who are you seeking?" And you know, Mary was seeking the right person. She was looking for Jesus. She was seeking him. But perhaps even her picture of God, of who Jesus was too small. Maybe she thought of God as a lot of us think of him, as someone who wants us to be a good person, who when we feel bad we can go to and he comforts us, as this abstract idea of kind of the big guy upstairs. But it's not a big enough picture. As he asks her this question, "What are you seeking?" Mary thinks still it's the gardener. She says, "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him. Just tell me where he is, and I'll go get him." And it's here that Jesus gives Mary this one-word sermon. She's in her despair, her disappointment, her disillusionment. Jesus simply says one thing: "Mary, Mary." He calls out her name, and it's in this moment that Mary turns to him and she sees who he is. She hears her name spoken from the lips of the Good Shepherd. And all her seeking turns into recognition of this God who knows her name. There's a dark comedy by the BBC that was out a few years ago called Rev. And it tells the story of this Anglican priest in London, Reverend Adam Smallbone, who pastors this small congregation that's threatened to be closed. And over the course of the seasons, we find out he's really not a great pastor. He's not a great preacher. He's no organizational genius. He struggles with his own failures and sins. And towards the end of the whole series, he's about to lose his church. It's going to be closed. He's in trouble with the authorities. And it's Holy Week. And he's broken. He's disappointed with his own failures, and he is carrying the cross from his church to another church. He reaches the top of a hill in London, and he's tired. He sets the cross down, And then he begins to sing, quietly at first, but then a little louder. He starts singing that song, The Lord of the Dance. Dance, dance, wherever you may be. I am the Lord of the dance, says he. And he starts dancing around and singing it louder and louder. And then, suddenly, this mysterious stranger comes up. This kind of disheveled guy in a tracksuit. And he starts dancing and singing with them. And Adam stops and looks at him and says, who is this guy? And the guy says, hey, you must be having a pretty good day. And they sit down on the bench and he says, no, actually, no. What's the matter? He says, well, have you ever tried to keep something alive and you just can't do it? The man looks at him and he says, well, you know, in my days I've learned a few things. And Adam looks at him expecting some kind of profound wisdom, to which he replies, you can't make an omelet without cracking a few eggs. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. You are what you eat. And at this point, Adam is like, okay, I want to be done with you. These are cliches, platitudes. They are not helpful. But then the man puts his hand on his shoulder and looks him in the eye. And he says, Adam. Adam looks up. How does this man know my name? Adam, we all have our crosses to bear. I understand. And I'm always with you. And he walks away. You see, when Jesus turns to Mary, he doesn't give her cliches. He doesn't exhort her to try harder. He doesn't say, let go and let God. He doesn't say, pull yourself up, you can do it. He looks her in the eye and he calls out her name. This is the good news of resurrection. Jesus isn't just an idea. He's not just an example. He's the living God, the good shepherd who knows our name. He knows you. He knows me. He's alive. The good shepherd who lays down his life for his flock to take it back up again. The good shepherd who calls the name of his sheep and they hear and they know him. And they follow him. Resurrection is the fact that there's a personal God who comes to us in our brokenness, in our despair, in our disillusionment, in our disappointment, and he knows us, and he's with us, and he carries us to a new creation. Mary, as she reaches out to cling to him, to embrace him, he says, Mary, don't hold on to me. Try and to go back to my God and your God. Go instead, he says, to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God. And Mary runs off to tell the rest of the disciples. Now this is good news, but take a moment to think about the fear, maybe the hard word that the disciples would hear in this. In the next verse we hear that the disciples were together behind locked doors in a closed house. Maybe like most of us are nowadays. And remember, the last memories that they had had, their last experiences with Jesus, were not those of faithfulness and success. When Jesus went into the Garden of Gethsemane to pray before he was arrested and crucified, he said, please, brothers, just pray with me for a moment. They fell asleep. As the guards came to arrest Jesus, they ran away. As Jesus was on trial, they didn't yell out their witness to say, no, isn't fair, that they were hiding. As Jesus was suffering on the cross, they were nowhere to be found. Peter, of course, explicitly 3 times denied that he knew Jesus. And so here they are, behind locked doors, afraid. And Mary's telling them, the Lord is alive. But remember the words that he said, go tell my brothers that I'm ascending to the Father. And perhaps for a moment they thought to themselves, Jesus is alive, but we have been such failures that he's not even coming back to see us. He's taking off. And we're left in our shame and our sin and our disappointment. And so they're behind these locked doors, not knowing what the future holds, not knowing what hope there is, when suddenly, right in their midst, in the center of them, Jesus comes to them. He stands among them, and he says 4 words. Peace be with you. Peace be with you. You may have failed. You may have abandoned me. You may have not had the strength to be faithful. It doesn't matter. I give you my peace. Peace be with you. And with those 4 words, what Jesus says is this: you are forgiven. You are blessed by me. You are welcome as not only my servants, not only my friends, but my brothers. Peace be with you. Peace, even though you'll go back into a world that's hostile. Peace, even though you'll continue to fail, continue to have disappointments. Peace, because it's from my hand. Peace, because I have conquered the grave. Peace, because I am making all things new. See, this is what resurrection is all about. To us who are here with our disappointment, with our despair, with our disillusionment, we come with nothing. And God gives us everything in Jesus Christ. To us who are brokenhearted, He calls our name. He's alive. To us who have failed, He forgives. To us who are dying, He gives life. Resurrection means that we're adopted into the family of God, that we are forgiven, that we are healed, that we are given life. So this Easter, as we come disappointed, disillusioned, maybe despairing, hear these words from Jesus. Receive that hope that there is a new life, a new creation, and it's yours through His grace. Amen.